Okay, we're good to go.
Good afternoon and welcome to National Library Week. This year's theme is Welcome to Your Library. I'm Chrysler Pitts, one of the librarians and a member of the National Library Week Committee, which includes Linda Staffelli, Craig Anderson, and Mohammed Hassan. Today our session will feature Craig Anderson, who will decipher the mystery of literature reviews using music and humor. Craig Anderson is one of the friendly and enthusiastic librarians at Kean University, where he's been working for almost 21 years. Craig has been mostly involved in reference and instruction at Kean and is interested in gaming and social media in a learning commons environment. He has presented at various national and international conferences, including the New Jersey Library Association, the Association of College and Research Libraries, the American Library Association, and the New York Comic Con. Craig has only been playing guitar for a little over a year, for which he sincerely apologizes. The next voice you hear will be the voice of Craig Anderson.
Okay, thank you, Chrysler. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I'm going to try and be loud. I'm going to try and have my guitar loud. So the guitar is here for a purpose. I've also included, I'm going to be talking about the Delta Blues in a little bit. So I've included this kind of old-timey house as my background. But you haven't come to the wrong presentation. This is a presentation about how to write a research paper and how to put together a literature review for that research paper. But the best way that I can think of to kind of demonstrate this is by talking a little bit about the old-time Delta blues, specifically the 12-bar blues is what they call it in the music. I'm not really much of a musician, so I apologize for what I'm going to do to your poor precious ears right now. But and be warned, this is going to get a little corny when I start talking about this. I'm going to start talking about the Delta blues. So next slide, please. Okay, so the Delta Blues, and this is a photograph of blues musician Robert Johnson. He's one of the more legendary blues musicians. This is only one of 3 pictures of Robert Johnson. And the story, the legend behind Robert Johnson is that he would play the blues with some friends of his, and most of the people he hung out with were like these kind of well-known blues musicians at the time. They were really accomplished. They were considered to be like the leading blues musicians in their field. And Robert Johnson, by all accounts, was just kind of okay with playing the blues. He could kind of hold his own. So then what happened is he went away for a little while. And I forget how long they said he went away for. And, just when everybody was wondering, whatever happened to that kid that used to play with us, he came back and started playing with them. And all these seasoned blues musicians are wondering, like, who is this kid and why is he playing like better than us now? Now, the smart money is on the fact that he probably went away somewhere and just kind of went by himself and just practiced day in and day out, all day, every day. But the way that the other blues musicians said that he had improved so much that they were starting to suspect that he had sold his soul to the devil or something like that in order to get this masterful blues playing. So one of the his fellow blues musicians said that when he was playing, their mouths were dropped open. There's another little story relative to that. Keith Richards of the Rolling Stones played some Robert Johnson for Mick Jagger. And Keith Richards was really excited to play Robert Johnson for Mick Jagger. And he put the record on and he's got Mick Jagger listening to these blues by Robert Johnson. And Mick thought, okay, this guy's okay. He's nothing special. And he said to Keith, yeah, who's playing bass though? Keith Richards said, there isn't a bassist, he's playing both parts. So, Robert Johnson is kind of like the king of the Delta blues, they call him. So the reason I'm telling you this is to just give you a little bit of background on Robert Johnson, but also to kind of immerse you in like the world and the mythology of the Delta blues. The reason I'm talking about the Delta blues right now is because there's a framework to most popular blues songs, and it's the 12-bar blues is what they call it. If Christopher can go to the next slide right now. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the 12-bar blues. I promise we're going to get to writing a research paper very soon. But I'm going to talk a little bit about the 12-bar blues. And the idea behind the 12-bar blues is you take a note, any chord. I'm going to be working with the G chord for right now. You play that for a little while. You can see it's got 4 measures here, and they don't even have notes on these measures. They just have these kind of slash marks on the screen. So these slash marks, you're just going to play whatever you want pretty much for 4 beats. And on the top line, you can see you play that first chord 4 times, and then you go to the IV, the number 4 chord from that. So if you start with an A, B, C, D is going to be the next chord you're going to play. So you're going to play that for 2 measures, and then you're going to go back to the number 1 chord, so the A or the G or whatever, for 2 measures. Then you're going to go to the 5th, and then back to the 4th, and then you're going to play the first chord another 2 times. And I'm going to play this a little bit, and it'll sound very familiar to you. And this is, if you're familiar with that song, kind of overplayed song, Hallelujah, originally by Leonard Cohen, and then it was covered by Jeff Buckley and Rufus Wainwright. In Hallelujah, when he says it, it goes like this, the 4th, the 5th. This is the 4th and the 5th that he's talking about. That's not a blues song, but it's the same kind of idea of a chord progression. So for right now, originally I wanted to, actually, Christopher, stay on this slide for a minute. So I'm going to start with a G chord. Actually, you go to the next slide for a minute. And then I'm going to want you to go back to the other slide. So what I'm going to do here, 3 chords in the truth. They always say, like in like punk music or like certain kinds of rock music, you only need 3 chords in the truth. So I'm going to start with the G chord. And the chords only go from A through G. So it's going to go G, and then it would be A and B, and then C would be the 4th chord from there, and then D would be the 5th chord, of course. So I'm going to start with the G, and then I'm going to move to the C and the D. Could you go back 1 slide, Kristen? So it usually starts out with something like, and then we go to the C chord. Back to the G. Go up to the D chord, that's that 5. C. So that's pretty much how it goes. It's that easy framework. And the thing about the blues music is that once you've got that framework in place, you can kind of put anything over top of that you'd like. when my guitar instructor was teaching me about this, he was saying how what they do in a lot of blues, a lot of the Delta blues songs, is they'll have one line. The person will say one line, and then they need to think of something that rhymes with that first line. So they'll just repeat the first line over again, and then they'll come up with a third line. So there's a Robert Johnson song where he says, I went down to the crossroads, fell down on my knees. And then he repeats that over again. I went down to the crossroads, fell down on my knees. Pray the Lord above for mercy. Save my soul if you please. And you could basically, whatever you want to come up with, say it over that framework, that repeat that one line twice and then come up with a third line. And that's, the Delta blues is basically the foundations of rock and roll, like modern rock and roll. Don't believe me? You ain't nothing but a hound, crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound, crying all the time. Well, you ain't nothing, you ain't nothing mine. So yeah, a lot of early rock songs follow that same format. So why the heck am I talking about this when I was supposed to be talking about a literature review? You're probably asking yourselves right now. If you go to the next slide, actually, next slide, now go to the next slide. Okay, so this is what I'm trying to tell people when they get to writing a research paper, because when you do a research paper, you can write about whatever you want to write about. And you can improvise, you can kind of put your own spin on it, as long as you follow that same kind of format. It's just like writing a blues song. As long as you keep that same format, that 1 and 2 and 1 and 4 and 5 and etc., you can write whatever you want in a research paper. Now I have the kind of the parts of a research paper set up here. The research paper has to have a title, and you can wait till the very end to put a title on it. You don't have to come up with the title first. And a lot of research papers, when you see them printed in scholarly journals and such, they'll have an abstract. I took a library science class once, and the professor said that an abstract is absolutely not the same thing as a summary. And they explained what the differences were between an abstract and a summary. And I still, for the life of me, could not tell you what the difference between an abstract and a summary are. They're very similar. I think an abstract is basically a summary, but with spoilers. So a lot of papers will have an abstract, and the abstract is another thing that you can do after it. But the main parts of the paper, the 1, the 4, and the 5, chords of a research paper are the introduction, and then you're going to make your first point, you're going to make your second point, and then you're going to make your third point, and then have a conclusion. If you're doing a longer research paper, you might even want to do 5 or 6 different points before you get to your conclusion. But it's going to be introduction. You're going to introduce all of your parts of your paper, all the different points you're trying to make, and then you're going to go to your conclusion. And then, of course, don't forget your bibliography. So let's say that I were writing a paper about Robert Johnson. The paper that I have set up here is microtonal analysis of blue notes and the blues scale. There's the scholars, music scholars, have tried to isolate the which notes are more blue than other ones. So which notes fall into that kind of blues style of music. So this is a good paper, and you can see what the author has done there. They've put a title on it, they put an abstract, and then it goes right into the introduction. If you go to the next slide, please, Krista. So this is 3 pages in truth. This isn't an entire paper. I've just taken a page from the beginning, a page in the middle, and then at the end. So this is Blues Criticism and the Signifying Trickster. It talks about it's by Ayanna Smith. It talks about the role of the trickster in like kind of blues, the theme of blues music when they write the lyrics for different blues songs. And you can see she's put an abstract there and she's got her introduction, and then it goes right into folk heroes, tricksters, and villains. So let's say that you're writing a paper on criticizing blues music and how the signifying trickster character comes into blues. So what you're going to need to do is you're going to need to write a literature review. And the literature review is, a lot of people get hung up on the word literature. They think that it has to be like they have to research like, works of literature like Shakespeare and Dickens and things like that. But it's really just, you need to find out what everybody else is saying. So if you're writing a paper, say, on Robert Johnson, the history of, Robert Johnson and how he came upon playing blues music, you need to know what everybody else is already saying about Robert Johnson. So if you've got a theory, let's say you have a theory that Robert Johnson was influenced by like another music, by Charlie Patton or one of the other blues musicians that he was playing with. If you're going to prove that Robert Johnson was influenced by this other musician, then you need to know what everybody has to say about both of these musicians. So you're going to do the research. You're going to go into, preferably, into the Nancy Thompson Learning Commons's databases and do some research there. You can find some of our music databases. We have Oxford Music is a good one. We have one of the ProQuest databases is just a music database. And you're going to find as many articles as you can find on whatever the topic of your paper is. So if you're going to say, let's say that Robert Johnson influenced Jimi Hendrix, and you do a lot of research on Jimi Hendrix and a lot of research on Robert Johnson, you want to know if somewhere out there's a scholar who said exactly that, who put forth a paper that says exactly how Jimi Hendrix was influenced by Robert Johnson. Or if there is a, one of Jimi Hendrix's close friends said something like, oh yeah, Jimi Hendrix hated Robert Johnson. He, wasn't influenced by him at all. You want to know what the experts have to say about the topic that you're about to put forth. So you would do that. You would get all of these articles and try and find, if you see a bunch of articles, because as we can see in this article, when she's talking about like blues criticism, you can see in the parentheses, she's referencing other authors here as well. So you might want to find those other authors if you see a lot of articles about your topic are referencing other articles that have already been written. You might want to see how those articles have been written and what those articles have to say about the topic. And then once you get all of your information kind of assembled, then you have to put it all together. So what most people are going to do is, as I said, write an introduction and then come up with some point. Robert Johnson was an influence on Jimi Hendrix because of his chord progression. And then you're going to put your introduction, and then you're going to write how chord progression shows that Jimi Hendrix was influenced by Robert Johnson. And then you're going to take all those articles that you've already read about Jimi and Robert, and then you're going to reference all of those articles. You're going to say, well, this author said that, Robert Johnson had the, 4, 5, and 1, and Jimi Hendrix had that same, but he did this other thing. And then maybe you're going to make a second point, say the other way that Jimi was influenced by Robert Johnson was because of the lyrics, the similarity in the lyrics. If you hear Jimi Hendrix's song Red House, that's a very Delta bluesy song. Maybe that song was influenced by Robert Johnson, or at least influenced by, the Delta blues. music majors are probably watching this presentation right now thinking, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about because music is not my strong point. But that's basically it. And then you come up with a third point, that this is another way that the two are similar. And then you come with a conclusion in which you wrap everything up. So, and it kind of depends on how long your paper has to be. If you do if you're doing a 5-page paper, you can do like a super long paragraph as your introduction. And then maybe at the bottom of that first page, kind of get into your first point. Page 2 is going to be all about that first point. Page 3 will be your second point. And then maybe at the bottom of page 3 will be the start of your third point. And then the conclusion will be at the end on, that'll be on page 4. And then the conclusion will be at the end of page 5. So that's basically how you set it up. And that's kind of how every research paper is set up. Once you get into writing research papers, and if you read enough like scholarly research papers, articles in peer-reviewed journals and such, you'll start to see that not everybody follows this format exactly. Some people will change it up a little bit. In a lot of scientific papers, they'll go back and forth to a different study that's been done, or a study that author actually did. And there'll be a little changes. And it's the same thing in blues music. Once you listen to enough blues musicians, they don't all follow exactly the 12-bar blues. They'll put in their own little fills and such like that. But that's basically it. And I feel like the best way to explain research paper is blues music. Once you follow that format, then you can do whatever you want with it. And there's a lot of freedom in writing a research paper or playing a blues song. Could you go to the last slide, Christopher? So this was just an example of the reference pages. If you're writing a research paper on Robert Johnson, this is like the kind of thing that you would want to find. You would want to find all of these articles on Robert Johnson. And these are some of the articles I read when I started talking about Robert Johnson. So just so I'd have some kind of vague clue of what I was talking about. So yeah, I definitely encourage you to read these articles if you want to look for these articles later. And definitely kind of delve into the mythology of like the old blues masters and stuff like that, and listen to some blues music. A lot of Robert Johnson's music doesn't sound overly it definitely sounds old timey, but if you listen to it, you can definitely hear how there's like a bass line and then there's the actual chords, and he's playing both of them at the same time. So unfortunately, I can't see the clock from the screen. So how much time have I gobbled up just talking about this? Krista?
Oh, I can't see the clock either.
Oh, okay. Linda?
My whole screen.
Anybody?
It's almost 4 o'clock.
It's almost 4 o'clock. Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I've been talking for a very long time. Oh, no, wait. We started at 3:30. Okay, never mind. Yeah, I think you can stop sharing. It would be great if I could just have myself as being the only person on the screen, but I guess it depends on how you're looking at it. On what format you have the grid. Right now I can see Linda. So any questions about writing a research paper, or I feel like I've spent a lot more time talking about the blues than I have talking about writing a research paper.
I don't have a question, but I would like to say, great job with these hidden guitar skills, Craig. I had no idea.
I had kind of learned here and there. I was really lazy about it until the pandemic started. And then I thought, you know what, I should really just start taking lessons. So I've been taking like almost weekly lessons since the pandemic started.
I think that's great.
So.
But I would like to say, in addition to that, I found this to be very interesting because
okay.
I think particularly for students, for those who may struggle with something like this, I know it's not easy. I know for me, I mean, I've been through a graduate program. It's sometimes not easy
Mm,
to understand or even to plan or execute. It's such a process. And even though I've written quite a few of them, I mean, haven't gone through undergrad, but more so graduate school, when you write a lot of papers and you do a lot of these things, it came easier as I had more experience with it, but it's still, I think it's a difficult thing. So making a comparison or helping a student to find a pattern,
mhm.
but building more of a connection to something that they either have an interest in, or maybe it's something that they're studying. Like you drew a great connection to music. But I was also in a recent presentation by Institutional Effectiveness, and it was about assessment and how they were drawing this connection to art and to painting. And I found that to be so interesting. So looking at it from a different lens and drawing a connection to maybe something that could help you understand the process in a different way, I think is so neat. Instead of just, yes, what you're talking about is writing a research paper, but drawing that connection to make the person understand the process in a different way, I think is wonderful. And whether it's art or whether it's music or whether it's performing arts or theater or whatever it may be, I think just changing the perspective to it being something that the person can connect with more, I think will make it a little bit easier and more digestible. So I think that's great. And I think this is just a great tool, but not only for writing research papers, I think just anything in general that you may struggle with. Drawing that connection, I think is a great way to go about it. So thank you. I mean, this is something I didn't think about until your presentation and institutional effectiveness. And I'm starting to see a pattern here, but I think it's wonderful. So
And I mean, yeah, thank you so much, Leah. Yeah, you could kind of take that with anything that has kind of that structure. I could have talked about how in poetry, if you're writing a haiku or something like that, you know, you can be as free as you want with a haiku as long as everything is 575. It's, you know, the number of syllables. Or you were talking about painting before. You know, if you're doing a painting, if you're doing it in like, say, Cubist style, like you can paint whatever you want, but if you want to do Cubist style, then you have to follow that same structure, that same framework with certain elements to it that would make it Cubist. And I feel like I know less about art than I do about music, so I don't know if I should talk about that, but
no, but I mean, even math,
oh,
there's
right.
a pattern. And almost most people sometimes have a difficult time understanding math concepts. I mean, to this day, it's something that I will probably always struggle with. But I remember there was a particular teacher in high school, and I think it might have been Algebra 2.
Yeah.
And as long as you can see the pattern, just apply it, apply the pattern, just find the pattern and you'll be fine. There's a structure, there's a form, there's a pattern.
Mhm.
And I think most people gravitate towards that. But taking it a step further and like you were saying, applying something that's easily understood by someone, whether they're interested in art or they're interested in music, and applying it to, I don't know. I don't know exactly how, but with a mathematical equation, that was just more like a pattern-based example, but something like a research paper, how that structure can be similar.
Yeah.
I think that's great.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And they say that I feel like I do struggle a little bit with music. It's like I said, I've been studying for a year, and this is like as far as I've gotten kind of with it. I could play 3 chords, you know, in order, semi-competently. And I've always been really bad at math. They say if you're really good at math, it's kind of a you tend to be really good at music because it's a similar concept.
I mean,
how,
well, geez, I don't know what I'm good at, and I'm not good at either.
That's why Brian May, the guitarist of Queen, has his doctorate in astronomy, actually.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's
he's
interesting.
like written papers. So. But yeah. So thank you again. That's,
Yeah, you're welcome. I don't really have much of a question, but
okay.
that's all for me.
Does anybody else have any questions? I know it's kind of just us here, so it's. So, all right. So I guess that's all I have. You know, I don't have a concert like set to play. Eh. Anyway, otherwise I just sit here and entertain you for another. Oh, see, now I can see the clock. Oh, because Chris stopped sharing. Entertain you for the next 25 minutes, but. Anyway. All right. Thank you all for coming, though. I hope this was interesting and enlightening, and I hope we get to kind of post this somewhere so that, you know, maybe some students can actually see it. So maybe I'll go like viral on TikTok or something like that. That would be interesting. So.
No, I think that's a good idea. Maybe on the web page that you created, where you
Yeah.
have all of these and the links listed, maybe there's a way that we can post the recordings.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, I think that'd be a really great idea. Thank you guys. I mean, I attended, I think 3 out of 4. I tried to get to all of them this week, but I think I missed the first one, but great job. I think this is a really great way to end the week, and I look forward to looking back on these.
Oh, yes, me too. So, all right, thank you so much. Let me see. I think I actually stopped recording from my computer up here. Oh, stop recording. There we go. I should have done that like 5 minutes ago.